Hi, everyone. So I'm not a maker and I'm not an implementer. I'd say I'm a translator. So a lot of what I do is spend time with patients and caregivers, really immersing myself in their lives and understanding how do they actually start to experience the amazing and sometimes less amazing tech that we're developing, and what is missing? What is missing in making that experience truly foundationally caring? So today I want to talk to you a little bit about how care has shifted over the past years, and what does that mean for patients and caregivers in terms of their experience with tech. So with tech advances, we all know that the experience of care and illness has radically shifted. Basically, what it means to be a patient, what it means to go into a consultation and engage with a doctor, what it means to be a caregiver has changed. However, despite these foundational, radical changes, when you actually sit down with people and ask them about their healthcare experiences and their emotional experiences, their social experiences, their experiences have not radically improved. People continue to experience profound challenges, and even if care has become more precise, it's often become less caring and careful. So I think that's where I want to build us a provocation here tonight. How can we start to change that? And what are some of the shifts that we need to reflect on to start to think about what the future of care could look like? A great example is when you ask a patient or a caregiver what is a good experience, even if they're getting the best tech or the best doctor, they may not actually be experiencing good care. Often good experiences are about those relationships and engagements that make people feel cared for and that they're important and empowered. So how can we start to solve for that? And how can we start to consider how tech can start to resolve some of those challenges as opposed to exacerbate them, which is often what we're seeing tech do, unfortunately, despite it being amazing in its conception. So I have quite a few shifts here, and I'm definitely not going to go through all of them, but broadly speaking, we've seen shifts over the past century and decades in the shifting landscape of care. So how healthcare is delivered, what that delivery looks like, how the medical interaction and consultation looks like. We've also seen radical shifts in how people conceptualize illness. So what does it mean to be a patient? What does it mean to be a caregiver? What does it mean to be sick? And finally, we've seen radical shifts in the space of health or wellness. So the emergence of a wellness narrative that radically has changed what it means to be well. So the first shift, I'll walk you through two of them as examples, but really, again, putting forward how can we start to solve for some of the experiential challenges with the tech that we currently have and as we move forward. So the first shift I'd like to talk about is technological care. So this design is not what it's supposed to be. But for a long time, the medical consultation was really focused on touching, feeling, and sensing. You'd go to your doctor, they would touch you, there wasn't the tech to actually start to see inside of the body. Care wasn't particularly precise, we could say, and with the rise of medical technologies, we've been able to start to see within the body and get a sense of the body in a more precise way. However, what has happened is care has become less caring and careful. Right now, if you go to a doctor, most of that consultation often happens through a screen. It's rare the doctor will even look at you, and if they do, they rarely touch you. When you speak to patients and caregivers, that touch, that sitting down with your subjective experience outside of the numbers and results is a huge part of feeling cared for. So the tension that has come up, the challenge that we're left with is even if tech helps us get a more precise read on the body, and maybe even if outcomes may somewhat be improving, tech is actually working to impede connection and to make people feel less and less heard in the medical consultation. So the question for us today is, what would caring tech look like? How can we start to leverage tech to enable rather than impede touch and validation? Instead of thinking of tech as a solution, how can you start to think about what would touch-enabled tech look like? How can you start to build intimacy through tech to bring back that experience into the consultation? The second shift I'll walk you through is the rise of the wellness narrative. So I think everyone at some point in their life has subscribed to this concept of wellness, and we all engage in it. But for a long time, being healthy meant having no disease or not having a diagnosis. Well-being was really seen as being free of disease. With the rise of the self-care and wellness narratives, we've ushered in an era of all-encompassing wellness. So it is now my personal and individual responsibility to prevent disease and take care of my body, and not only prevent disease, but constantly enhance myself. So move beyond just healthy and move into the best me, the most productive me, the healthiest me, the most enabled me. How wellness has become all-encompassing and mostly an individual responsibility. This is great for certain people, but for most people, it's unattainable and disempowering and often alienating. What we see here is the rise of health anxiety, where people are now constantly sensing that any disease happens at any time. This is where we're seeing the use actually of a lot of healthcare preventative services for people who may not actually be at risk. So there's the difficulty of making sense of what actually risk is anymore and trying to make sense of that with a pervasive sense of anxiety. So instead of speaking of individualized wellness and all-encompassing wellness, this sense of I need to self-care and go to meditation and yoga to become better at my job and in everyday life, what would it mean if we actually start to partner with people and instead of putting more responsibility on people, partner and have co-responsibility with them? And not only focus on their individual wellness, but actually start to think about communal well-being. What does it mean to be well within your local community? To really enable that. So what is the role of tech instead of individualizing wellness? Actually start to build communal wellness that feels like partnerships for people. So I'd like to ask you, with the tech that you're developing, with the initiatives that you're putting forward, are you actually enabling more human futures? And if not, how can you start to do that through tech? Thank you.